Hey guys, I'm Nick and welcome back to the channel. Well, today I'm talking to you about the new upcoming animated Star Trek series called Lower Decks. Now, initially I thought that we might be getting Discovery Season 3 first, but it seems like maybe we might get Lower Decks first, based on a couple of little inside hints I've heard recently. So today I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about the upcoming series, Lower Decks. Let's get into it. So a lot of you Next Generation fans out there would remember an old Season 7 episode entitled Lower Decks, which kind of focused on a group of younger ensigns and so forth on board the Enterprise D. And it focused on this group of officers that kind of wasn't really that important on board the Enterprise. They kind of had low-level jobs. But we kind of got to see what life was like in a day on the Enterprise, focusing on these very, very junior and probably unimportant group of officers. And that's kind of what the premise for this new animated series is. Mike McMahon, who is one of the writers and story editors on Rick and Morty, which probably I'm sure some of you probably watch out there, he is behind this series. So it's not necessarily going to be a kids animated series. It's not going to be for the little ones. It's probably going to have a little bit more adult style content in it. So the series is going to be a half an hour animated format, and it's going to focus on these 4 ensigns on board this kind of smaller ship, less important, isn't really much of a big deal amidst the Federation fleet at all. Now, in terms of our characters we have on this show, our 4 ensigns, we start with Ensign Boimler. Boimler is kind of like a very by-the-book young Starfleet officer. He's very book smarts, but he's not very street smarts, so to speak. Boimler's a bit of a stickler for the rules. He's going to need to kind of maybe loosen up and improvise a little bit more if he's going to ever rise to the ranks of Starfleet. So yeah, Boimler seems to be very good at the theory of stuff, being very book smarts, but maybe not so good at putting things into practice in the real world. Next, we've got Ensign Mariner, and she seems to be a bit more of a loose cannon. Mariner's a bit of a badass who kind of doesn't really follow the rules all that well. She's been demoted a few times before. She, in theory, should be a much higher rank than she is, but she kind of keeps getting demoted because she just can't do things by the book. I kind of sense this character is maybe a little bit like Ensign Ro, I think, in that element. I remember Ensign Ro when she first came on the Enterprise in the last season of Next Generation. She was ensign, but I remember Riker saying that Ensign Ro should have been a lieutenant commander by now, but she kind of, just messed up too many times and rubbed people the wrong way and got demoted maybe once or twice. And it very much seems like Ensign Mariner will be kind of maybe a little bit like Ensign Ro in that regard. She's kind of going to be a bit of an irreverent kind of character. She's very much Starfleet through and through, but she just doesn't care enough. She's got a bit of a can't be f***ed attitude, it would seem. Next, we've got Ensign Tendi, and Ensign Tendi is a young medical ensign working in the med bay on board the Cerritos, and she appears to be an Orion in race with the green skin and all. And Ensign Tendi is a bit of a Starfleet fangirl, it would appear. Her posting on the Cerritos is her very first Starfleet commission, straight out of Starfleet Academy. She's just over the moon to be there. She's obviously been a huge Starfleet fangirl for many, many years. She's probably a bit like a very over hyperactive kind of Star Trek fan that will be just gushing and talking about everything and just be absolutely rapt to be on board the ship and in her first assignment straight out of Starfleet. The last of our 4 ensigns is Ensign Rutherford. He is an engineer, and he's kind of got a bit of a cybernetic implant going on, so he sort of seems like a cross between Geordie LaForge with the visor and Lieutenant Detmer from Star Trek Discovery with the whole kind of cyborgy implant thing on the side of his head going on. I get the impression that this cybernetic implant of his is a relatively new thing and he's kind of just getting used to it, and there might be some comedic opportunities involved in him getting used to his new cybernetic prosthesis. So Rutherford apparently is really good at the whole engineering department stuff. He's very keen, but I think he probably makes a few mistakes. He's still a little bit green, even though he's quite skilled, and maybe the new cybernetic implant thing is going to trip him up a few times in terms of his work. Now, even though these are our 4 characters that the series is primarily focusing on, we've got some other characters as well who are kind of like the main bridge crew, who are kind of the leaders on the ship, but they're kind of a bit unaware, I think, that the show isn't kind of fully focused on them. It's obviously focused a little bit more so on our young ensigns, but nonetheless, we have to have our primary bridge crew. So in that sense, for starters, we have the captain, Captain Carol Freeman. She's the captain of the Cerritos. She's a very capable Starfleet captain, even though her ship isn't a very important one amongst the fleet. So our chief engineer would seem to be this large Bajoran fellow called Lieutenant Shax. He's a bit of a gung-ho character, or he's always wanting to kind of eject the warp core or something in every emergency, no matter what it is. He's a bit of a gruff kind of fellow. So it'll be interesting to see what his character plays out like. We haven't really seen too many male Bajoran characters on Starfleet series. Obviously, we've had Ensign Ro on Next Generation, and we had Major Kira on DS9, but we haven't really kind of had too many male Bajoran characters, apart from the guest appearances on DS9 and so forth. As a main cast member, we haven't seen a Bajoran one, so it'll be interesting to see this character of Lieutenant Shax as the tactical security chief on board the Cerritos. And then we've got this doctor who's a Caitian doctor, a cat-like race. She's very much inspired by, there was a Caitian on the original Star Trek animated series back in the 70s. So I think this chief medical officer on board the ship is an inspiration or a homage to that character on the original animated series. And she maybe doesn't have the best bedside manner. And her character is called Dr. Ta'ana. She's kind of, I guess, good at medical stuff, but maybe hasn't got the best bedside manner. So it'll be interesting to see what her character is like. Now, the ship is entitled the USS Cerritos, and it's a Californian-class ship. Now, in terms of this Starship class, we haven't actually seen a California-class ship before. We've seen the USS California, which was an Excelsior-class ship, but we haven't seen a California-class ship before. So there's a pretty good chance the Starship we're going to see in Lower Decks is of a completely brand new, never seen before design. And that's going to be exciting to see. Now, in terms of the time frame for this show, it's going to take place about a year after Star Trek Nemesis, but maybe about sort of 4 or 5 years before the whole synth attack on Mars and so forth that we saw in Star Trek Picard. In terms of the tone and flavour of this show, it definitely feels like it's going to err on the side of the more comedic elements. Mike McMahon, who's the executive producer of the show, has said he has been a lifelong Star Trek fan, knows every episode back to front. So it would definitely seem like there will be a few in-jokes and references to other Star Trek series that the fans will certainly appreciate. I'm sure this series is not only for the fans, but also you could probably come in and watch it if you don't know anything about Star Trek at all, and if this was, you know, your first introduction to Star Trek. But he seemed to definitely indicate in an interview at Comic-Con that the show would definitely be one that the fans would appreciate and have, you know, probably in-jokes and inside references and so forth that true fans would definitely get. He's also said that this series will definitely be standalone episodes, much more like in the vein of Next Generation and so forth. This is not going to be a serialized series like Star Trek Picard was. Each episode will be its own story. So that's kind of a bit of a good difference of storytelling style, which will be kind of good to see, and also be more like Next Generation in its probably tone and flavour because of it. It's great to see that this show will be a a forward-moving show from Nemesis. So we've had far too many Star Trek iterations in previous years that have focused on prequel stuff, whereas this will be a sequel series in the sense that it's set after Nemesis, so I think that's good. It's definitely part of Star Trek history we haven't seen before, so that will be good. I wonder whether there'll be some storytelling opportunities to perhaps incorporate other elements of Star Trek that we know will be occurring around this same sort of time. Characters or story elements that are both from Next Generation, DS9 or Voyager, which is all possible amidst this series. So the first season will feature 10 episodes and will air on CBS All Access this year. There isn't an actual air date as of yet. As soon as we find out some information on that, I'll have it to you. So I hope you've enjoyed my little breakdown of what we are due to expect in the upcoming animated series Lower Decks. What do you think? Do you think you're going to watch this series? Do you think it's going to be good? Do you think it's going to be a bit, I'm not really into animation? Or do you think, hey, bring it on, I love Rick and Morty, this is going to be cool. Leave a comment in the comment section. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. And I'll see you guys next time for my next review.